Imagine you're standing in a jungle right now.
Okay.
But I want you to erase that stunk footage you probably have in your head. You know the one.
Right, the vibrant colors, the monkeys screeching.
Yeah, exactly. Life exploding in every direction. The whole David Attenborough narration vibe. Forget all of that. I want you to picture a jungle that is completely, terrifyingly silent.
Which, biologically speaking, is usually the loudest alarm bell nature can possibly ring.
It really is. It's the difference between a library and, well, a tomb. We aren't looking at a scene of nature in flow here. We are looking at nature holding its breath. Trees standing tall with leaves that are barely moving. A jaguar just freezing mid-step to listen to something that something humans can't even hear. It's unsettled. It's restless.
It's a very heavy atmosphere.
And that heavy atmosphere is the setting for the piece of fiction we are unpacking today.
Wow.
We're doing a deep dive into the awakening, securing the living earth.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're looking at Chapter 2.
Which has that incredibly ominous title.
Yes. The Others Are Waiting by Mahendra Shah.
And, you know, for anyone listening right now who might be pausing and thinking, wait, why are we analyzing fiction on a show about deep insights? Stick with us.
Yeah, please stick with us on this one.
Because Shah isn't just writing a story about talking animals to entertain us. He is constructing a really profound philosophical argument. He's using narrative to explore this concept of agency.
Right.
Essentially, he's asking what happens when the environment stops being a background setting for human drama.
And starts becoming the main character itself.
Exactly.
It's a complete shift in the power dynamic, because usually the story we tell ourselves is, you know, humans saved the earth, we are the heroes, we broke it, we fixed the mess.
That's the narrative we like, yeah.
But this story asks a much darker question. What if the earth decides it's just done waiting for us to figure it out?
It's nature taking the reins.
Or the pause, in this case.
Right, the pause.
Yeah.
Because our protagonists here are a cat and a mouse. But again, let's manage expectations for everyone listening. This is not Tom and Jerry.
Oh, definitely not.
There is no slapstick here. It is gritty, it is dark, and honestly, reading this chapter felt more like reading a transcript of a covert military operation than an animal fable.
It felt like a summons, like being served legal papers by a process server who
happens to have claws.
Yeah. So let's walk through this, because Shah does some really incredible work with sensory details right in those first few paragraphs. We mentioned that intense silence, but then there's the sound that actually is there.
The cracking sound.
Right. The text describes a cracking sound in the distance. And notice how specific the text is about what that sound is not.
It explicitly denies the natural explanations. It tells you it's not a branch falling, it's not an animal moving through the brush. It says it's a deeper sound.
The sound of a forest burning.
Yes.
And that distinction just stopped me in my tracks. Because a falling branch is natural. That's the cycle of life. Decay, regrowth, bugs eat the wood, the whole circle.
It belongs there.
But a burning forest, at least the kind of burning implied here, is an interruption. It's violence.
It's a total violation of the natural rhythm. And then, you know, building on that, you have the smell. The text says the smell of smoke had been clinging to the air for weeks as if it belonged.
As if it belonged.
Okay.
Honestly, that might be the most terrifying phrase in the entire introduction for me.
Why is that?
Because it suggests that the emergency has gone on for so long that it's become the status quo. The animals aren't even panicking anymore. They're just enduring it. It's become background radiation.
It's the normalization of disaster. We see this in human psychology all the time, right? Creeping normality.
Right.
But here, Shaw is applying it to the ecosystem itself. The jungle is resigning to a state of siege. And in this oppressive, smoky, silent atmosphere, we finally meet our two key players, the cat and the mouse.
And biologically, historically, these two are mortal enemies, predator and prey. But Shaw pairs them up immediately as co-conspirators.
I want to dig into the cat first, if we can.
Let's do it. I feel like the cat is us. Or at least it's the version of us that's tired and constantly doom scrolling. It's perched on a low branch. Its fur is described as too clean. Its body too relaxed. It's digging its claws into the bark. But it feels very detached from the reality of the smoke.
That phrase, too clean, is such a great catch. It implies this separation from the grit and the dirt of the forest floor. The cat represents the observer class.
The cynic.
Exactly, the cynic. It has this attitude of, I see the world burning, but I'm safe up here on my branch, so I'm just going to watch it happen.
Until the mouse shows up. And let me tell you, this mouse is not some timid, scurrying little creature.
Not at all.
The text places the mouse on the damp earth eyes focused, completely urgent, and the power dynamic flips in an instant. The mouse looks up at the predator, the thing that by all rights should eat it, and just says, "You're late."
That is agency in action right there. The prey is commanding the predator.
It's wise.
The mouse is the one driving the plot. It completely destabilizes everything we think we know about the natural order.
And the cat's reaction is just pure snark. It flicks an ear, it asks, "For what?" And when the mouse says, "The summit," the cat just wipes its face and says, "Another human meeting."
That line does an incredible amount of heavy lifting in the story.
It really does.
Another human meeting. Think about the exhaustion packed into those 3 words. It tells us that the animals have been watching us this whole time.
They're watching everything.
They've watched the climate accords, the global summits, the treaties, the endless press conferences. And from the cat's perspective, those meetings are a joke. They're performative theater.
It is a total burn on human bureaucracy. We love our meetings. We love our PowerPoint presentations about saving the world while the forest actually burns.
Right.
But the mouse shuts that cynicism down immediately. It says, "Not theirs, ours."
And that's the hook. That's where the chapter really grabs you. This isn't a negotiation with humans. This is an internal council. It suggests that the animal kingdom operates with its own political structure, its own United Nations, if you will, that we are completely oblivious to.
So the cat realizes this is real. It stops grooming itself, which is pretty much the universal cat sign for, okay, I'm listening.
Yeah, full attention.
And this is where the chapter shifts from setting the scene into what I call the indictment. The mouse lays out exactly what is wrong. And it's not vague complaints. It's a very specific bill of charges.
It really is. The mouse starts with the sheer scale of the destruction. It says they burned another one today, not a tree, a whole forest.
Right.
But then it goes deeper into the water systems. Rivers that never dried up before are turning into nothing. And the ones that are still moving are described as poisoned and sluggish.
Sluggish is such a visceral word choice there. A river is supposed to be the veins of the earth, rushing and alive. Sluggish implies it's clogged, it's dying. It's like a blocked artery.
It implies a deep sickness in the system. And then the mouse mentions the disappearances. Whole herds disappear, and nobody asks where they went.
That line struck a chord with me.
Because it highlights the difference in our value systems. To humans, a herd disappearing is a statistic. Maybe it's a conservation headline we scroll past and forget 5 minutes later. But to the mouse, those were neighbors. Those were entire communities.
It's a complete erasure. And the mouse contrasts this current nightmare with something the text calls the old laws. Now, this felt almost biblical to me. The mouse says, it wasn't always like this.
It's the foundational philosophy of the entire book, really. These old laws aren't written down anywhere. They're the laws of physics and biology.
The natural order.
Yes. And the mouse defines them very simply. Take what you need, leave enough for the rest. Keep the balance.
It's basically the core definition of sustainability, but it's framed as a moral imperative rather than an economic strategy.
Exactly. And the text points out that humans actually used to be part of that. We were part of the cycle, same as us, the mouse says. So we weren't always the villains in this narrative. We were just another animal playing our part.
But then, as the mouse puts it, humans started making up their own rules.
Which is the ultimate hubris.
Thinking you can outsmart the very system that keeps you alive. And the cat, going back to our resident cynic, the cat captures the modern human mood perfectly. It says, humans build, humans ruin. It goes around in circles.
The cat has totally accepted the doom loop.
Right. The cat thinks this is just inevitable. Humans are messy, they break things, they build things. Why bother getting upset about it?
But the mouse hasn't accepted it. The mouse fires back. Nature doesn't take orders.
That is the pivotal moment of the chapter for me.
It's a complete refusal to accept the status quo. It's the moment the victim decides to fight back.
And there's this great visual contrast Shaw uses right here to show that difference between the old laws and the new human rules. The cat looks out toward the human world and sees a glow. But it's not a warm, inviting glow.
No, the text is very specific about the nature of that light. It says it wasn't the soft light of fire or the gentle shine of the moon. It was bright, harsh, and constant.
Constant. That's the word that really stuck with me. Nature has rhythms. It has an off switch. Night, winter, sleep. But the human world is this unblinking, artificial glare. It doesn't sleep. It doesn't breathe.
It represents a total rejection of cycles. We've built a world that tries to overcome nature rather than live within it. And the mouse looks at that glow, that symbol of human dominance, and says, this time, we decide.
This time we decide, I literally got chills reading that. It's a declaration of independence, or maybe a declaration of intervention.
Intervention is definitely the right word. Think back to the subtitle of the book, A Covenant of Beings in Harmony.
Right.
You can't have harmony when one instrument in the orchestra is just drowning out all the rest. Sometimes, to get back to harmony, you have to force the noise to stop. The animals are forming a coalition.
So they move out, they leave the safety of the ancient tree, and the journey they take is incredibly symbolic. They aren't retreating deeper into the jungle to hide from the smoke. They are walking towards the city.
They're walking right into the belly of the beast.
Exactly. And look at how the terrain changes beneath them. They move from the soft, damp earth of the jungle onto the harder ground. The text describes the path as dry and broken, where roots tried to push through but failed.
It's a landscape of defeat for nature. The concrete has won.
It felt like reading a commando mission. 2 tiny agents infiltrating enemy territory. And as they get closer, the sensory details shift again. The trees give way to something colder. The sounds change from the forest silence to machines, voices, and things that never stopped.
There's that relentlessness again. Things that never stop. You can almost feel the stress level rising. For a wild animal, the city isn't just a physical place. It's an assault on the senses. It's completely alien.
And then we finally see the humans. The cat and mouse are walking right among us. And this part, to me, is the sharpest critique in the whole chapter.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the humans aren't chasing them. They aren't screaming or trying to catch them. They aren't even looking at them.
They are entirely oblivious. The text says the humans walked quickly, eyes stayed ahead, never veering to the side.
Tunnel vision. We are so intensely focused on our destination, our phones, our human meetings, that we literally don't see the natural world walking right beside us.
Biologists actually have a term for this. It's a phenomenon called plant blindness or nature blindness.
Plant blindness.
Yeah. If it's not on a screen or blocking our direct path, our brains just filter it out. It doesn't exist. The cat and mouse are invisible, not because they have some magical camouflage, but because of our own indifference. We've just tuned them out.
And that makes their mission both easier and way more terrifying. They can walk right past us to plan our, well, we don't know what they're planning yet.
Right.
But they can do it right under our noses because we simply aren't paying attention.
We have tuned out the frequency of the wild, and the mouse knows this. The mouse actively uses our blindness as cover.
So the mouse leads the cat into a narrow space between 2 buildings, an alleyway, the dark heart of the human city. But right before they go in, the cat stops. It looks back.
This is a crucial moment of hesitation. The cat looks back at the trees it left behind, and the text says, the trees still stood, but they were further away now.
And then there are 2 words that change the entire context.
For now.
For now.
Yeah.
That is just so ominous. It's not just a physical description of distance anymore.
No, it's a temporal threat.
Exact.
It implies the trees are on borrowed time. It implies that the buffer zone between the city and the wild is rapidly closing. If this summit fails, if this intervention doesn't work, the city is going to swallow whatever is left. For now suggests imminent destruction.
It raises the stakes completely. It's not just about the cat being annoyed by the smoke and wanting clean fur. It's about existential survival. So the cat makes its choice. It follows the mouse into the alley. And the text says, the alley led to something that can no longer wait.
Yeah, that leads us to the final, slightly fragmented phrase of the chapter. Oh, much bigger than us.
Yeah, I noticed that formatting in the text. Oh, much bigger than us. It looks like a fragment or maybe a typo. It doesn't even start with a capital letter.
In the context of the narrative, I think it's a very deliberate stylistic choice by Shaw.
How so?
It suggests that what they're meeting, this massive summit, is so vast. It was already happening long before they arrived. They're walking into the middle of a sentence, the middle of a global movement. It's incomprehensible to a single animal. It transcends the individual cat and mouse.
The others are waiting. The mouse kept saying that throughout the chapter. It implies this massive global convocation, every species, every ecosystem converging on this one point.
It creates a sense of scale that is deeply humbling. We as humans think we are the big deal on this planet. We're the main characters.
Right.
But this chapter ends by saying, no, there's something much bigger than you waiting in the dark. It's the collective weight of the living earth.
So zooming out a bit, we've got the restless jungle, the cynical cat, the determined mouse, and this silent march into the blind human world. What is the big takeaway here? What is Mahendra Shah really trying to tell us with this story?
I think the core message is right there in the title of the book itself, Securing the Living Earth. The clear implication is that humans have failed that mission.
We broke the old laws.
We broke them. We took too much. We didn't leave enough for the rest. We completely lost the balance.
And because we created this massive void in leadership, nature is stepping in to fill it.
Precisely. We tend to view nature as this passive backdrop. It's a pantry we take resources from, or a nice park we visit on Saturdays to feel refreshed.
A commodity.
Exactly, a commodity. But this text challenges us to see nature as an active political player, a player that has officially run out of patience.
It's a major shift from the usual environmental slogan of save the earth to the earth is saving itself and we might be in the way.
That is a very potent way to put it. It frames environmentalism not as some kind of charity, oh, let's be nice to the poor trees, but as sheer self-preservation.
Right, the mouse isn't asking for our help.
No, the mouse is making a decision. That strips humanity of its dominance.
It really makes you rethink that standard walk to work. The text describes the humans walking fast, eyes ahead. It genuinely makes me want to stop and just look to the side.
You really should. The chapter asks us to look at those silent observers. The birds on the wire, the squirrel in the park, the cat sitting on your windowsill.
What are they seeing?
Exactly. What do they know that we are aggressively ignoring?
The text mentions silence a lot, right from the opening paragraph. But you're right, it's not an empty silence. It's a silence full of communication that we just aren't decoding anymore.
And that's the tragedy the mouse is pointing out when it talks about the old laws. We used to understand.
We used to be part of the cycle.
We lost that connection when we built those constant lights and the machines that never stop. We essentially drowned out the signal of the natural world with our own artificial noise.
I really appreciated the character arc of the cat and all this because I think a lot of us can really relate to that level of cynicism. I know I definitely can on certain days.
Oh, absolutely. The cat is the embodiment of the modern condition.
Right. Because it knows the rivers are drying up, it sees the smoke. It's not stupid, it's not denying reality.
No, it sees it all.
But it's easier for the cat to just say, humans ruin everything, it goes in circles, rather than actually get down from the branch. It feels so much safer to just be snarky about the apocalypse.
Cynicism is a massive comfort zone.
It really is.
It feels intellectual, right? Like you figured it all out. But in reality, it's actually lazy. It allows you to observe the disaster without ever feeling responsible for fixing it. The cat represents that apathy perfectly. But the crucial point, the hopeful point maybe, is that the cat actually moves.
It gets down. It leaves the comfort and safety of the tree and walks into the cold, hard city. It actively chooses action over observation.
And I think that is the direct challenge Shah is offering you, the reader. You can be cynical about the state of the world, and let's face it, it's very easy to be cynical right now. But are you willing to get down from the branch?
Are you willing to walk into the alleyway? That is the big question. And as they head into that alleyway towards the others, you really have to wonder what the verdict of that summit is going to be.
Well, if the indictment is that we broke the old laws, I don't think the verdict is going to be a simple slap in the wrist.
Probably not.
If nature is indeed a covenant of beings, as the subtitle suggests, we are currently in severe breach of contract.
It's a really heavy thought. This chapter is relatively short, but it packs such an incredible punch. It uses fiction to drive home a reality that we try so hard to ignore every single day. It bypasses the logical brain and goes straight for the gut.
It does. It bypasses our typical defenses.
Yeah.
Because if you read a dry scientific paper about climate change, you might just tune out. The data is overwhelming.
It's just numbers.
Right. But when you see it through the eyes of a cat walking through a burning forest, realizing its home is gone, you feel it. You can't argue with a narrative in the same way you can try to argue with a graph.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day today, probably walking quickly past trees you aren't really looking at. The mouse said, "The others are waiting." The implication is that there is a massive coordinated consensus among every living thing on Earth except us.
Right. So the question is, if nature decided to hold a summit on our behavior right now, today, what would the verdict be? And perhaps more importantly, what would the sentence be?
Something to think about the next time you see a bird watching you from a branch. Is it just resting? Or is it taking notes? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Stay curious, and maybe I look to the side once in a while.
See you next time.